This video aims to support you to understand, identify, and connect with the experience of grief and grieving, and to hopefully prompt some reflective questions, as well as also prompt some potential coping and soothing tools for grief. The dictionary definition of grief that I have found explains it as a deep sorrow, painful and oppressive. It can be a real or imagined ground of complaint, and it also described to feel grief. So grief can be a felt sense, it can be an experience, and it can be a sense of something happening, and therefore the grievance would be the complaint. And that can be real or imagined depending on where we are in our mental state. Common experiences of grief in terms of thoughts may cover life is meaningless. You might have thoughts that this is too painful. I feel low on energy and enthusiasm. There might be difficulty organising your thoughts because of the grief, and your thoughts may revolve in some cycle or a difficulty thinking of anything other than around the topic that led to the grief, such as a breakup, a loss of a job, pet or family member, or a persistently bad situation or string of events, and so on. Grief doesn't have to be about losing a person or a pet. It doesn't have to be a loss of a person. It can be a loss of a thing. It can be something that you felt should have happened, didn't happen, and a loss of that. It's a sense of loss in this way. You may also experience thoughts of ending your life, and that might be present in various ways. You might feel that life is unfair. You might think, why me? I wish I could take their place. Why did they leave me? Why did they do this to me? Why did God do this to me? I'm losing my faith. How could this happen? And where is the justice? These are all examples of thoughts you might experience when experiencing grief and loss. Feelings you might experience when experiencing grief and loss might include feeling void, empty, and nothingness. You might feel separate to yourself, to others, to the world, to the situation even. You might somewhat feel dizzy and withdrawn, lacking of motivation and energy. You might feel angry. You might feel resentment and bitterness. You might feel jealous. You might suddenly feel the need for control to try and keep everybody safe. You might feel protective. You might feel avoidant of life, in denial, low in mood. You might feel shame and you might feel guilt. Emotional responses you might have when it comes to grief might include feeling withdrawn and distant, sleepiness, avoidant, exhaustion, numbness, disassociation, depersonalization, as a way of your nervous system coping with feeling all of this intense stuff. You might feel empty and lacking. You might have emotional responses, reactivity of rage and avoidance and protectiveness. Urges that you might experience when experiencing grief is the need to avoid life or avoid talking about or dealing with anything connected to the grief. You might find yourself bargaining with life or a person or a situation to try and get away from the bad thing that feels awful that you are losing. You might feel the need to blame others for their part in causing this grief and loss, or how they dealt with it. You might compare your grief to others, or your life to others, or your situation. You might want to sleep. Lacking in urges might even be part of this experience of low motivation. You might just not have any urges at all. It might just be very, very bleak and dull. This can all be directly linked to behaviours, and there might also be an intense need to run away or physically remove yourself from the situation so you don't have to deal with the grief or the people associated or the things associated. You might feel the need to avoid the pain or feel something different by using alcohol, drugs, self-harm, or fighting with others as a way to feel anything else, or as a way to show people how deeply in pain you are. Behaviours you might experience when experiencing grief could potentially be engaging in avoidant behaviours such as social gatherings, avoiding discussions of the topic, avoiding planning life events, not wanting to engage in life after the grief has occurred, pretending that nothing has changed. You might even become so angry that you do become violent or destructive in some way. You might feel that you become very snappy and intolerant to others' experiences or their needs. You might feel that you judge others for how they grieve or don't show their grief or their judgment of you. You might have behaviours that mean you are acting in seeking justice, and that can be both through legal channels, but it can also be by taking revenge yourself. You might feel the behaviours and the urge to like make snippy comments or do petty things, or you might want to actually get revenge and struggle with those feelings and the behaviours that leads to. You know, people do end up with prison sentences when they are experiencing grief. It does happen. It's not common, but it is an experience that has been logged and reflected upon. You might feel the need to give up on tasks and become completely despondent. You might just not have any fight anymore. You might have an overindulgence in bargaining behaviours such as tarot readings, gambling, drinking, and overspending. Trying to get away from the reality. You might find a need to overcompensate with others or situations. Make the most of everything, which can be exhausting. You might lack boundaries, or you might create rigid rules to try and keep everybody safe. Physical sensations you might experience when experiencing grief and loss include headaches, exhaustion, feeling like your whole body is full of lead with no energy. You might feel cold and have insomnia. You might feel hungry or not hungry at all. You might overeat even if you're not hungry as a coping tool to avoid the feelings. You might feel sick, dizzy. You might feel outside of your body and floaty. You might have feelings of numbness. You might find that food and anything else that you would normally seek pleasure from is intolerable and is suddenly devoid of feeling or enjoyment. You might suddenly lose your ability to feel like you can make wise choices, and you might feel trapped in the situation. Reflective questions for your experience of grief and loss include: what does this information prompt for you? And what aspects do you think you might have experienced? What memories or events can you remember might connect with these experiences and these feelings and these behaviours? When do you think you experience these symptoms now? Is there anything these symptoms tell you about how you hinder your own emotional fulfillment and healing from the grief? Or about where you are in your grief cycles? Is there anything else these symptoms tell you about your self-care needs and what they might be? Does grief or the related stages to grief come up regularly, and why might that be? Is it linked to specific people, events, hormonal changes, foods, and other things that might remind you, like smells, anything like that? What helps you to remain grounded, feeling whole and present with yourself and the world? What helps you to be present with your grief? What stage of grief might you be in now, and what does this mean to you? Are you holding on to grief due to guilt? And in what ways might you be able to move forward whilst honouring your grief? Other videos that you might find helpful include the soothing tools for grief, the safe memory visualization techniques, the guided meditation for grief videos, and there are 3 to choose from. The inner child visualization meditation might also be helpful. The video that explains the stages of grief and how this comes about might also be helpful for you understanding your grief